Hello, and welcome to the Modern Day Mayor podcast, a space for conversations about the kind of future we want to live in and how we begin building it right where we are. If you too share the quiet belief that something better is possible, you're in the right place. Is there a pig flying somewhere nearby? Because if you would have told me that I would be filming episode 1 of season 3 of this podcast in video format and still sick and congested and puffy, I would have thought you were nuts. But not any more nuts than the world we're currently living in, which is why I'm so excited to bring season 3 of this podcast forward. There are people all around us that are reimagining the ways that they connect to and serve their communities. And I want to help amplify those stories. So for episode 1 of this season, we are talking with Logan Trudell, who has a beautiful story of healing, overcoming, and is here to share the ways that has shaped how he wants to show up in the world and help others heal too. Let's take a listen. Hi, Logan. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Hey, Cecilia. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. For the benefit of the listeners, I stumbled upon Logan sharing his story on social media. Logan is here today to share, has a lot of experience with some transformations he's seen on the other end of mindful experiences with the body and energy. So definitely want to open up the floor for you, Logan, to share one or as many of those as you feel called. But before we get started, I would be curious as to your experience, your life, what life was like before this was normal to you, quote unquote normal.
I love the direction we're going already.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for a lot of people who have been able to see beyond illusion, they generally will have an experience where it's like maybe atheists before, or they have some part of their life where they don't feel they're fully on what many people would call their path.
Yeah.
And that very much for me was being involved in medicine in the allopathic model as a registered nurse. And I was 25 years old, making 6 figures, seeing more money than I'd ever thought I'd be making. So excited by the profession and realizing within less than 2 years, it was killing me on the inside. And I had no idea that whole event was going to actually put me on the path to become much closer to God than ever before and have a newfound relationship in so many different ways. But I had to first go through the initiation process of realizing that road that I had planned in my mind, the expectations, the dreams, all had to be shattered for me to become what God actually wanted me to be. And go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and how, when you had this realization, like how was that received by your community, your family?
Well, some could say that the community I had then no longer exists as a community in my space now. And I think that's a very challenging process for people to go through and there's nothing bad about shifting out of relationships. What I found in my journey is I've had so many relationships with people where in the past it was like a wound and reactivity and like, oh, this was a bad situation. And now with where I'm at, I'm like, thank you so much to everyone that I've crossed paths with, because it has given me an ability to be where I am now. And if it wasn't for all the people that screwed me over, the people I screwed over, the persecution that I did to others, the victimhood that I was in, if I didn't go through all of that, I wouldn't be able to walk the path of non-duality and become a practitioner in my own right. In terms of my transition, the first big transition I had was I was working in the hospital, had a rash all over my body where doctors are telling me it's eczema. And I'm like, I'm working in medicine with doctors with 20, 30, 40 years experience. And they're telling me that this is a genetic condition that nobody in my family has. And I'm like, this doesn't add up. And I remember the day I was standing in the ICU taking care of patients, and there was this pause, and everything was silent, even though the alarms were still going off, the fluorescent lights were hitting my skin, and I was like, I am in the matrix. And I look over at the break room, and my friend at that time, who was my closest coworker, and he was very tapped in, and he had a deep connection to all the people that we worked with, and he was a really really cool guy, and he was very much on his own path. But I remember looking at him, and I'm like, he doesn't even know. And I felt so alone. But that was the
Yes.
feeling I needed in order to start actually making changes in my life. And it wasn't until my coworker Brian, one day I walk into work and we hear the news. I remember our charge nurse Carmen looks at all of us, and it's like a very gloomy morning already weather-wise. And everyone, right when we walk into that break room, everybody knows something's up. And she's just like, I just have to tell you guys, Brian passed last night. He took his life. And if it
Wow.
wasn't for Brian doing that, I remember my first business when I quit my job, moved abroad, bought a one-way ticket, moved to Colombia, was filled with fear and sickness and disease. Brian is what set me forward on my journey, because if it wasn't for him doing that, like, I saw the consciousness of humanity, and if you keep going down the path of darkness, you will go into darkness. And I was like, if I keep doing this, I will end up like Brian. I've
You
never
forget
had
who you
thoughts.
are.
Yeah, yeah, and I never had thoughts of ever, like, I think we as humans, we can all have thoughts of suicidal ideation and stuff, but it never permeated me to where I was like, I'm going to do that. But with Brian, I saw, if you think negative all the time and you don't clean your bucket, it'll just be inevitable. So I had to leave that environment, and it was the best decision I ever made.
So prior to this, it sounds like you had this, like you really leaned in to what was calling you to leave your current circumstances, right? Did you have experiences prior to that where your intuition showed up very strongly, or had you always been sensitive to energy, or was that really, Brian's losing Brian, was that really like a catalyst event that kind of woke you up to something inside?
I think when I backtracked, doing all the work I did in Colombia on myself and going to all different types of therapies and really understanding myself, I can go back to times when I was a kid and I was told by people that I was extremely sensitive. And that telling of me being sensitive was probably true. I was sensitive. But the judgment that came with those words meant you're sensitive and that's not okay, rather than you're very sensitive because you're a special being. And we're all special, but
Right.
most of us are told that we're not. And so throughout my life, and I'm still working on it, I had very little self appreciation. And it was through having to go through my own hero's journey where I had no choice but to say, hey, you're doing a good job. Like, you should be proud of yourself. You should love yourself.
Yeah.
And a lot of the
What
people I work with now all have wounds of self appreciation.
That's really interesting. I've never heard it phrased that way before, and it feels really true. You mentioned your hero's journey. What would you consider kind of like the start? And I don't know, I'd be interested to know if you think you've had kind of like an ending or a conclusion to that where you're like entering your next chapter.
I think if we look at kind of what I've been through so far, because my journey really, I would say, obviously started with my nursing career, but it really began at probably age 25. Um, I think a lot of the path I'm on now is I have cycles of hero's journeys all the time. For me, my lessons in this lifetime are really to um, continue to dissolve the identity that is created, and see what that next chapter is. And I
Yeah.
think anyone who has the courage to do that is going to be met with a reality in which they could never even fathom. Because we can vision board and we can create everything we think that we want, but we can never actually create that which God is going to give us. We can never imagine it.
Totally. I have found myself, I continue to discover the ways that I create stories about where I'm headed because I connect the experiences with the emotions, right? And then I just get dialed in on the experiences, and my spirit team will very kindly come in and say, actually, that's not going to happen that way, and then there's like a period of grief that is totally optional, right? It's totally self-created, and I'm like, oh, it's because I was hanging on so tightly to this vision of what I thought was for my highest and best, or what I thought was aligned. I am curious, we talked about some of these transformations and, some of I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth, but like miracles, flat out miracles that you've
Totally.
witnessed.
Yeah.
What were some of the earliest?
Okay. So the first miracle for me was being told by all of society that the skin condition I had was eczema and that it could never be solved, and I'd have to take topical steroid creams the rest of my life. I didn't believe that intuitively. I'm like, if I'm a, I got into nursing because I thought I'd be healing people. And then when I realized that I was in a system that actually profited off of people's illness, I was like, oh, I did not sign up for this. It's the best thing that could have happened to me because I now have an understanding of how that system works. And I can speak to people who are still in that system with non-judgment and an ability to allow them to make their own educated decisions.
Yeah.
But the first miracle was healing that and watching it not come back. And that led me to understanding that a lot of this game is a game of identity. And like when I threw those steroid creams away, because I was well on my journey, I spent tons of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
And when I threw those creams away, I remember that split decision where it was like, this is not going to live in my body anymore. And I don't care how long it's going to take. And I had one friend in Colombia at that time who had the exact same condition as me. And he's well on his way. He's been eczema free for a long time too. But there was this time where he was crying and he's like, dude, I think we're going to have to live with this for the rest of our lives. And I looked him dead in the eye and I said, I don't care how long it takes. I will not live with this anymore. I don't care. And I had the conviction and I actually healed quicker. So that was the first miracle for me. And then from there, I can remember going back into periods of like unconsciousness, as we can call it. Just like throughout our day, we can forget to breathe. I was going through many of those periods and then kind of finding my way back onto the path. And now that I've been on my path for a much more consistent period of time, and I've been able to help facilitate people getting back on theirs.
Yes.
I've just been way more conscious, and because of that, I see way more miracles.
I am feeling called to go back to this eczema thing for a second, and I'll admit maybe some bias here because I have people that I love very dearly who also struggle with skin conditions. It's something that I struggled with as a child. It's still, conveniently in my family, but I believe that's because of the energetic wounds that have been passed through our lineage, right? Versus like the genetic story that we're told. And when you shared that moment of like the defeat that can come about as a result of like suffering from these conditions, oh my God, like I got full body chills, and that's just such a relatable experience. Can I ask a little bit more about, like how you went about healing this? Like, did you enlist the help of a mentor? Was it holistic practices? What worked for you?
Yeah, I actually ended up writing a whole entire book on my journey because it is quite extensive. It's called Eczema Free Naturally. Yeah.
So, not a plug here, folks. That just organically came about. Yeah.
I'm going to revamp it because everyone asks me this. They go, what was it that healed you? And the thing is, I have to reframe it for them because people are looking for the silver bullet so that they can apply it to their lives.
Yes.
And when it comes to healing, there is a square that we need to imagine in our heads. And the Eastern systems get this down pretty well. If you look at traditional Native American culture, same thing, the 4 directions. If you imagine a square and you draw a point on each square, on each edge, you look at the points and you just write physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, you will see that is the key that you need to heal. And so there are many things that need to be addressed in healing. In my own healing journey, all of those had to be addressed, from getting body work done to detox practices to going back to family traumas
Mm,
and like talking to my inner child and doing deep shadow work. I did plant medicine for a long time. I got sucked into some very culty situations with ayahuasca and
mm,
like outsourcing my power to another entity, which it was just like what I was doing with the allopathic model,
yeah.
which is fear based. It's very similar for people that are going down that path with plant medicine. It's the same coin, different sides. And
Mm,
so I went through again hundreds of thousands of dollars in mentorships, coaching programs, all types of supplements, countless books, and through that I eventually healed myself. And the first phase of healing was just getting it so the eczema went away. That was a miracle in itself. And then I would notice, because I was still unconscious at that time, that if I didn't stay on top of my habits, it would come back.
yeah.
And then I got to the point where my habits were so dialed in and my body obviously restored itself. And there was no longer incongruence with where I was and where I was aligned and not
Mm,
aligned, and I stayed healthy. And so I think the number one thing, if I'm going to give anyone a silver bullet, is you have to understand the fundamental truth that our bodies are self healing and self regulating. This is a core component and principle that's taught in osteopathy.
yeah.
And so if you truly feel that your body is self healing and self regulating, then all you have to do is give it the conditions and the environment and the love and the nurturing for it to come. But for many people, they're impatient because they've been programmed by society that if you don't have Amazon now, you're screwed. If you don't have that next thing, if you don't have that post on Instagram, FOMO. And
Yeah.
so, like, you have to get out of the impatience and realize that if you want to heal anything, you also have to realize and take responsibility that for me with eczema, I lived 25 years. So during those 25 years, I could probably find that I did a lot of things over time that caused the issue. It didn't just happen overnight.
Mm,
So we cannot fix anything overnight, but we have to look at everything as a whole, as a vessel. And this is where allopathic medicine tries to split us so that we're not sovereign. It's like the mind is one thing, the liver
yes.
is one thing, systems. Well, it's all one thing. We're all interconnected,
Mm-hmm.
our bodies, and then us as people as well. So, with a more holistic understanding of anything, we can more holistically assess and ascend.
Mm. You know, I'm of the belief that we go through these experiences personally because so that we can better help usher people through them, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I would be interested as to what you're doing now with having, you know, on the other end of having, it sounds like several healings and continued healing. Like, how has that changed the way that you show up now?
Yeah. So, when I was going through my eczema journey, I got into, when I moved to Colombia, I got into like the coaching realm, and I started my first business, which was healthcare stress relief. And that was a complete flop. But
Mm,
I was essentially trying to help healthcare workers manage stress while I was out of the stressful environment. And what I found
yes.
really quickly was it was not a product market match. Like no healthcare worker who's burnt out is going to do practices to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And I realized very quickly that business is not as easy as it seems.
Yeah.
So from
Can I tell
there,
you, I'm relating to you so hard right now because there have been several ways that I have also tried to institute, like, you know, one, for example, is like this idea of like an intuitive leadership framework because in the corporate world, they have all these leadership models and it's very prescriptive and it's diluting people's special sauce, right? And
yeah,
that was a complete flop because nobody in corporate actually thinks they need this, right? Like they think
totally.
it's just normal. And
Yep.
yeah, oh my gosh, relating
And I
so
had,
hard.
yeah, I had the exact same ideas. I was going to take these methods and bring them into corporate.
Yeah.
But the thing is, until you have the compassion to understand every single thought pattern of how a corporate employee slash CEO works, you will not be able to sell to them because you
Yeah.
have to understand the exact metrics that they're looking for, which is all numbers.
Yeah.
So you have to go into their shoes. And I didn't have the skills or the capacity at that time. It's actually with working with more and more people over time and all these different avatars through detox and coaching and all this stuff that in learning sales and marketing and all these things that I understand avatars better. I understand
Mm,
the characters and the masks that people wear within society and how they operate.
yeah.
And so I can talk to those people better. But what I'm doing right now, uh, really funnily, I had this vision in my mind of like a Native American based health studio. I just had a very, very small image pop in my head after I trained with my mentor and was initiated in body work, in particular myofascial release, which is a whole nother story. So I healed my eczema, and then I realized that I had all these structural issues, especially with my feet, which was leading to back pain. So
Mm.
for over 5 years, and I didn't even know how much pain I was in, I had low back pain and foot pain, but I just kept trying to move forward in life. And then
For
eventually, you go
for
ahead.
people, I was going to say for people listening that maybe aren't familiar with myofascial tissue and how it operates, how would you, kind of succinctly describe that?
Yeah. So I'll start with where I was at and then I can explain how it works. So
Fantastic.
I had tremendous amount of foot pain at the age of 25, and I went to Dr. Scholl's in Colombia after already going through a bunch of different things. And this doctor is trying to give me, he puts me on a scale, measures my feet, and he's like, your feet are so inflamed. You definitely have plantar fasciitis. They give me like a little massage, and then they say, we're gonna get you some custom orthotics, and then we're also gonna give you prednisone. I'm like, okay. I leave. 2 days later, I come back to pick up the orthotics, and I remember the conversation with the doctor. He comes in the room. He's like, here they are. You can start with these. And how'd the prednisone go? And I go, I didn't take it. And he goes, what? And I go, yeah, I didn't take it. And he goes, why not? You're non-compliant. And I'm like, well, you told me that these orthopedics that I'm going to put in my shoes are going to solve the root problem, right? And he goes, yeah. And I go, okay, so if the root problem is addressed, then the inflammation will come down naturally, correct? And he stormed out of the room.
Mm.
And so from a very early spot in with the eczema, and then with that, I realized that there are root problems that are not being addressed in the industry. But I had no idea how to solve this on my own. So I just continued on my merry way up until my 30s with tons of pain that I didn't even know was that bad. And then eventually one of my friends told me about this guy in Brazil, in Florianopolis, Edu Gomez, who has become my mentor. I went to him for 5 days and we did myofascial release, which myofascial release is a technique in which it requires much more precision and patience. But essentially, your fascia is it's a web. If you understand the mycelium network in mushrooms and how it's all interconnected in earth, it's the same thing with our bodies. We have fascia and it interconnects all of our muscles, all of our bones, everything. And so when you understand how important fascia is, you can understand that if you move fascia on your calf, it's going to potentially affect your pelvis or your upper
Mm.
back.
Yeah.
So it's all interconnected. So I worked with Edu 2 to 3 hours a day for 5 days. And so by the end of that, I no longer had back or foot pain. And all of the pain was coming from my mid thoracic region in my back.
Mm.
So, how could foot pain be coming from the back? In traditional allopathic medicine, they'd say that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But if you understand from a holistic point of view, it does make sense because the issue is usually not in the exact spot of the tissue, it's usually somewhere else. But with fascia work and myofascial release, it's a deep unwinding. And so Edu did start on my feet to make me comfortable, but he knew that he was going to have to unwind until he found the root cause of the issue.
Yeah.
And so through that period, every day I would go walk on the beach and I had to relearn how to walk.
Wow. Would you say that that root cause was purely physical, or was there an energetic component as well?
Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual at the box.
All of them.
Yeah. So you saw the video on my TikTok with him pulling the grief out of my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. So someone could surmise that that grief is what caused all the structural issues. But I would go deeper and say everything in my life caused all the structural issues because it's all interconnected.
Yeah. Yeah. That kind of the image of like whack-a-mole is coming up right now.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it.
I'm wondering, like, what advice would you give somebody for, like, how to maintain a healthy structure? You know, we work to solve these things, and then it's just constantly strings being pulled, and we have to keep addressing and addressing. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I find in certain cases, myofascial work might not be beneficial for someone. In very specific cases, such as someone with very, very weak muscles needs to re-strengthen. And so generally, for the most part, I follow a system in which I teach people and help facilitate people. Most people come to me for the release and then they stay for the rest. So releasing is really the structural component. Rebalancing is like with minerals and detox in the internal world. And then re-strengthen is like using your muscles in a way where the whole unit is functional and functioning together. Because generally, when we segment and we divide, and we focus on just one area in the body. You can see this with a lot of people at the gym. They're just doing a lot of deadlifts and back squats all the time.
Yeah.
When we don't focus on the whole thing, we lose strength because it's not balanced. So those three things are the main things. But anyone, to answer your question in a more direct way, anyone who wants to be able to increase their level of consciousness so that they can live in better states, the number one thing I can give you is get more in your body. Everyone is being told and sold to get out of their body so that you can become a product and be sold to. If you get in your body and really hold your soul within your heart space, you won't need to go grab that extra cup of caffeine. You
Yeah,
won't need to go smoke. Yeah.
exactly. We've been given this idea of like what getting in your body looks like. Literally sold this idea, right? It looks like pre-workout. It looks like blender shaker bottles. It looks like a gym
Oh,
membership. It looks
yeah.
like a yoga studio. It looks like Pilates, you know? And I think those can be things that help support our experience of getting in our bodies. But like you said, like the balance that is required in order to genuinely heal and move some of these things. Logan, can you share about what you've seen on the other side of some of this myofascial release?
Yeah. So I'll start with the story of receiving the work from Edu on, I think, day 4. He was working on my sternal area and I was in and out during the work, depending on how deep you go into a parasympathetic response. Some people can even fall asleep. Um, but for the most part, people are pretty much still there and going through their process. But he was working on my heart space, and I just remember, and here's the funniest thing about it: I recorded the whole session. So anyone that questions this story, I can show them the video, and I haven't gone back and edited everything. I will put that video back up with better editing of everything that happened. The video that's up online right now is just showing him pulling something out of my heart space, and then his hand is closed and he goes and he washes his hands. And so while I was on that table, I was on my back. In the video, you can see, if you see the full one, essentially he's working on my space and he pulls something out, his hands closed, he goes to the bathroom, and for the next 20 minutes, I don't know how well you can see it in the video, but I was shaking for 20 minutes. And from my own internal world, what it felt like was somebody had just plugged in the electricity and my whole entire body just turned back on.
Wow.
And so I was shaking. It was so much energy. And this is why when a lot of people say like they want to go on the path of becoming a better person and connecting more to God, it has to go in increments, because if you
Mm.
fully meet God, your nervous system cannot handle it.
Yeah.
And so essentially in that session for the next 20 minutes, he's moving throughout my body and trying to ground the electricity that's now flowing through it.
Mm.
And this is where it gets really interesting. So that happened. And then as he's grounding me, he just goes, "Did you have a big red dog when you were 10 years old?" And I go, "Yeah, his name was Riley." And he's like, "Yeah, you were holding the grief in your heart when he passed away." That was also around the same time that my parents were filing for a divorce.
Mm.
So very interconnected.
Yeah.
But I never planned to be a body worker, but when Edu worked on me and I saw the results for myself, and not only saw them, I felt them. And I had the video recording, so I could go back and watch that and go, "Oh, that did happen."
Yeah. Isn't that
I could
always
not, yeah,
nice?
I could not gaslight myself at that point.
Yeah.
So um, when I saw and felt all of that, I was like, wow, there's really something to this. And he knew nothing. I had never posted about Riley on social media, talked very seldomly about anyone. Nobody knew about this. And Edu doesn't go on social media anyway.
Yeah.
But there were parts where he's like on my mid thoracic and he's like, "Did you have a pretty hard time as a nurse?" And like while he's on my back, I can remember I just start telling him a story about this guy who I was taking care of. And I walk into the room one day and he's bleeding out on the floor.
Mm.
And we take him to the to get scanned for his brain to see what's going on. And I have to call his wife at 2:30 in the morning to let her know that she needs to get to the hospital immediately because her husband's dying.
Yeah.
And then to sit in that. And so he could see all of that just by putting his elbows in my back.
And are these things that you can also see in your patients when you work with them?
So right now, I'm still, as a practitioner, developing what you could call vision. But I
Yeah.
do feel the gifts that Edu has is not going to be exactly the same gifts as me.
Yeah.
But I have already developed an ability to see in my own way. For example, I was working on one case, very interesting lady. She had C-shaped scoliosis on her back.
Mm.
So the first session, I feel her spine, and she's got the scans and everything. And in her thoracic region, there's a C. So it goes from straight to it curves. And so in my mind, I'm like, "Oh man, I don't know how many sessions I'm going to need to work with this woman and all this stuff." So we're working together. We get about 45 minutes in, and I'm working on her left hip. And my eyes are closed, and I just get I don't see it. It's just there. I just get the word death. And I feel into my energy, like my stomach. And when my belly, I can feel it right now, when my belly starts to engage, and I mean belly more as solar plexus, not the actual region.
Yeah.
Um, when that starts to engage, I know I need to say something. So I just said to her, "What's your relationship like with death?" She goes, "Why do you ask?" Got kind of defensive. And I
Mm-hmm.
go, "It's just coming up." And then she expresses that she doesn't want to be here anymore.
Mm.
And just through her saying that, 2 weeks later, she comes back in. I'm like, "How's it going? How have you been?" In my mind, I'm like, "We got a lot of work to do."
Yeah.
She's like, "Oh, I've been good. I've been great." Smiling. And I'm like, "Okay." I start working on her, and I'm going crazy because I'm like feeling her spine and it's straight.
Mm.
And I'm like,
No way.
yeah, I'm like, uh, so hold on a second. You're, hold on. You right now I'm feeling, you came in and your spine was crooked before, right? And she's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Your spine's straight."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And so I need to, she's very busy right now and she's going through her own stuff, but I'm attempting to get her to get the scans.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I that's more of like an intellectual and a rationalization of
Sure.
like trying to prove this to people, which
Yeah.
I don't actually need to do because real recognize real. People
Yeah.
know and they can sense like the authenticity of the story as well. So, but I have so many of these interesting stories that I've seen, and I also have friends that are on their own journey who have told me stories that it's just like, you can't make this stuff up. And you see enough of this stuff and you're like, oh, yeah, there is something very divine about our existence as humans. And there's something so much greater than we could ever imagine. And everything we've been told is probably not how reality actually is.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, this is a beautiful canvas for us to be able to identify what that actually is to us.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I saw a video from you, and please, if you don't feel comfortable going here, that's totally okay. But you were talking about the undeniable linkage between this body work and then some of the more maybe surprising or somewhat even more unbelievable experiences that happen on the energetic side with like
Yeah.
releases and even like some things that go bump in the night. Like,
Yeah.
would you feel comfortable sharing about some of that?
Absolutely. I think it's very important to talk about. So I first learned about, are we going into the realm of like entities and stuff like that?
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
be, yeah.
Yeah, so I first learned about entities. I've worked with a lot of powerful people, especially in the coaching space. And Samuel Sagan is an excellent resource. He has a school called Claire Vision. And there's so much I could say about Samuel Sagan. But if you go into his work, he was very much in the essence of teaching people how to go inside so that they could develop what they call in Claire Vision subtle energy bodybuilding.
Hmm.
So it's bodybuilding, but for your subtle energies.
Hmm.
And if you go into different types of esoteric text traditions or very old medicinal models, you can see that there's more to just the physical body than like one layer, the skin suit. There are subtle energy bodies that exist. This is why when I was living in Northern California, I had a roommate and he was very intuitive. He wakes up at 5 in the morning when I'm getting ready to go to work, and I'm like, I'm going to mess with this guy. So he had his sleeping mask on and he starts walking in the hallway. And I just stand there and I'm getting ready for him to bump into me so I could start laughing after he
Yeah.
gets scared. He gets this close to my nose. And for those who are just listening to this, is about an inch. And he goes, Logan? He could feel me even though we weren't touching.
Sure.
So how do you explain that? And then we can talk about the telephone game or telepathy and all of these things, which are still to some people they would consider those miracles, and for many people who are a little bit more advanced with the internal world stuff, that's like child's play.
Mm.
So there's so much to all of this, but in terms of Claire Vision allowed me to start seeing that there are not only subtle bodies of energy, there are also, if we go down the Hollywood route, Hollywood has shown movies like The Exorcism, things like this.
Yeah.
They've also shown a lot of movies related to cults. In my own path, I've seen what cults are and what they are not, and I've also seen what entities are and what they are not. Entities in general, what someone in like a more biblical context would call an entity or a demon,
Mm-hmm.
is simply, in better terms, an energetic parasite or an energetic fragment that
Mm.
can, in various forms, be moving around in reality and can latch on to people. And people get very afraid about this because they're like, oh, do I have one? They want to know, they want people to do exorcisms on them.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal. All you have to know is the more you train your internal world, the less likely you are to allow less than wanted attachments to stick to you.
I love that you called that a parasite because it's so true that it requires us as humans to have a lower vibration, right? In order for it to even enter into our experience or to thrive and grow. And so, yeah, I mean, to kind of like tie things to current events, like it's why it's so important that people not stay in those overwhelming, all-consuming thoughts of like defeat and, hopelessness. It's because, yeah, like that's exactly what makes us susceptible, right, to those energies.
Yes.
So, yeah.
But there's so much more to this game of life, and anyone who's in a very dark place, it generally just means that there's more cleaning to do, and it's not cleaning from a place of like someone who's more clean is cleaner than you with this
Right.
shame. It's like we all have to go through our own cleaning. But have you ever heard of the concept Watiko, Cecilia?
No.
Okay, Watiko, I can't remember which researcher, I think his name's Paul. He has a book on it. But essentially, Watiko is the concept that there is a dark force, or like an energy that exists in all of humanity. And so if I want to look at someone and go, they're disgusting and they're a parasite, I have to look back in the mirror of myself and understand how I have that behavior myself.
Yeah.
And the only way that we can actually advance as society and as people is to collectively, and not in a political aspect at all, but we first need to go internally, and then collectively we need to all realize that in order for us to get to the promised land, whatever that means, we all have to get rid of the darkness within ourselves, and through that we hold up a mirror which shows other people what the parasite is. And so we are still very much in a phase of societal advancement where a lot of people want to complain about how bad society is today. If you look at David Hawkins' work, in particular, his scale of consciousness, as a whole, society has never been in a higher state of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So we're actually in a very good spot. But we are also in a time where the darkness is being shown, and people are walking more towards either I want to live in a false AI, robotic, mechanistic reality, or I want to move into more of like a natural, etheric, uh, nature-based, going back to roots and connecting to earth and family and values. And you can choose whichever one you want. I know which one I'm going down.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a little bit more challenging.
The word connection is really being highlighted for me right now. Like which path is going to bring more connection into your life? Connection to self, connection to others, connection to the earth, like you said.
If that's what you value.
Yeah. 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 Very true. You mentioned a second ago about, some of like I don't know if this is what you said, but this is what I experienced, was like the darkness, like that lives inside of us. Would you say that body work is one way to help address some of that? And would you use that word interchangeably with like shadow self?
Yeah. Yeah. So Carl Jung said, in order for us to reach the highest heights of heaven, our roots must go down to the darkest depths of hell.
Mm-hmm.
And so why I love myofascial release so much is because it, I wouldn't say force, it facilitates the person having to do their own shadow work.
Mm.
And it does that because if you look at massage, I have a lot of massage therapists coming to me who want to do training and stuff. And that's definitely something I'll be offering in the future. What I've noticed with a lot of people who are in this space of healing and health is when someone first starts their career path in this field, if they don't have strong energetic boundaries within themselves that they've developed by doing the shadow work, they will attract clients that are in victimhood and are in a lower state of consciousness, which will lead to them actually having their energy extracted.
Wow.
And so you can see with massage, a lot of massage therapists are doing very similar routines throughout the day, sometimes working, if they're self-employed, even better, but sometimes working for corporations that are extracting their energy while their clients are also extracting their energy. So a lot of these clients that are going to get massages done are only going when they're in pain and when they want a quick fix.
Yeah.
When people step in and work with me, one, they're like, this is different because it's myofascial work. And then it's also different because I have different standards because I've gone through the rigmarole of all the systems that don't work. And so I hold my clients to a standard in which I'm going to facilitate this, but you're doing the healing.
Yes.
All I'm doing is putting my elbows in your back, and you have to go through the breathing. And almost after every session, I go, good work. And
Oh,
they go, you did the work. Or they say good work to me. And I go, no, you did the work. And yeah.
yes.
And those are the people that allow for me to be able to work in a path in which I am not burning out. In December, I woke up at 6 a.m. I went to bed at 10 or sometimes 12.
Yeah.
And I was going from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 p.m. at night. And it was because I was getting more energy and not from an extractive state. It was because I was empowered seeing people walk out of my office with a smile on their face.
Yeah.
Also knowing that I wasn't going to put them through the revolving door that is, I'm just going to crack your back and do this for 5 years and extract $15,000 from your bank account.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you identify with the idea of like being a vessel for God's energy? Like, as for me as an intuitive practitioner, and I love to hear you talk about, the empowerment that you are looking to give clients, because that's exactly how I feel as well. I think there's an opportunity to rethink and redesign our relationship to intuitives, because for so long we've just been, asking them to tell us, right? We want certainty, we want something to grasp onto, and is outsourcing our power as a result.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's one of the reasons why it's taking me a little bit to land on how I am meant and desire to share my intuitive skills. I'll call them skills because they're accessible to anybody who cares to develop them. Is that, I want to do it from a place of empowerment to facilitate that healing in a similar fashion. And so for me, I really resonate with, the idea of like, it's not me doing this work, right? Like it's a co-creation with God, like with source energy, like, and that is why, to your exact point, it's not depleting,
Yeah. So I've learned from some pretty powerful mentors, and also some of my best lessons have come from people who had nefarious intentions.
Mm,
People want to point the finger, and I used to do this at the people who have persecuted us, but it's important
yeah,
because we learn very valuable lessons of how we do not want to show up.
yeah,
And so one of the biggest things I've learned from seeing both sides is that true power does not come from pedestalization, wanting attention, wanting validation, wanting to extract, searching for that which is external. Very, very, very good practitioners usually always come under the guise of it's not me. I'm, as you said, just a vessel for God to pour through. And I can only allow him to pour through when I continue to claim that which is not him.
mm, beautiful, Logan, beautiful. I'm so excited to share with listeners where they can find you and learn more about your work and services.
Yeah. So let's see, X, TikTok, and Instagram, presently Logan. My business in Denver is True Elevation Health. That's TRU Elevation for my last name. TrueElevationHealth.com. If you are in the area and you want to do body work, you can book on my site or just message me on any of those platforms. I also am doing quite a bit of traveling now. I have VIP clients that either want to fly me out or come to me.
Yeah.
So there's many ways to work with me. I will be also creating a course in which I can provide the education for people to do self-release at home, because I've had so many people that want to work with me but can't either afford to come out or just don't have the time. So I'm going to be dropping that pretty soon as well. So yeah, many things to come.
Such a pleasure to get to connect with practitioners of integrity like yourself. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining today's conversation. As always, contact info for our guests is available in the show notes. And if something stayed with you today, I'd love for you to share it with a friend or comment and leave us a review. It helps more thoughtful humans find their way here.